I'm in my master's program for exercise science. I currently live in Tampa, Florida, and I run a consulting company. I'm an IFBB bikini pro.
All right, my name is Katie Rutherford. Katie Ann Rutherford. Most people know me by Katie Ann. I'm a natural figure pro and a raw powerlifter, and I live in Columbus, Ohio, and am a coach. So I have my own coaching business that I run in Columbus, Ohio.
I started lifting in high school because I was injured from track, and then
me too.
Yeah, and then I started to kind of just love it more than I liked track. And then once I got to college, I decided to do a show because one of the trainers at my gym was like, well, why don't you try it? So I just tried it, and ever since then I've been kind of into it, and that's it.
So I got into lifting first in high school. I lifted a little bit. I ran track and cross country in high school, and then I lifted a little bit kind of to supplement my track running and make me a better runner. And then I got injured. I was planning on running in college, running track, but then I got injured, so I decided that I liked I couldn't run, so I decided to just focus on weightlifting, and that's kind of when the transition started. And then I continued to lift throughout college, and then actually had dreams of competing and always wanted to compete in figure. That was my the first kind of thing that I thought of when I wanted to do something in the fitness industry was compete in figure, and not I didn't even know about powerlifting. And then when I started working with my coach, Laurin Conlin, that's when I first started powerlifting. And so that's kind of how I got into it.
Well, I started lifting probably, like I said, about 16 when I was injured, and I was just kind of doing stuff. I had really no idea. And then organized lifting probably 18, and then I've been powerlifting, power building, however you want to call it, for about 3 years.
So I first started lifting when I was probably about the same age, probably about 16 years old in high school. And then kind of organized, I always found the online like bodybuilding.com type programs, and I started those in college. So it was sort of semi-organized, kind of what I wanted to do. And then really seriously, probably for about 2 to 3 years, and then doing powerlifting this past year. So I started last summer a specific powerlifting program a little over a year ago, which is called a DUP powerlifting program. So that's when I started that.
I haven't found any negatives besides, of course, the more wear and tear that we kind of get, but you're going to get that with everything. Mm-hmm. So I think that I've only really had positives from it from a physique standpoint and being able to build muscle, but also when I'm in a caloric deficit to maintain muscle. And it helps with not really having to do much cardio,
right.
Or do less, I guess, cardio, not really rely on that, and just be able to use my training as an effective way to kind of walk around more like how we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would say that definitely, I mean, the only negatives is just kind of the wear and tear, but that's going to come with
that's everything.
Going to come with anything. So any sport that you do, if you're excelling in any sport, you're going to have injuries. So, and actually weightlifting is, I saw statistics about powerlifting. It's actually one of the lower,
safer,
percentage of injury versus like a kind
We're
of
just
physical
more beat
sport.
up, I would say, than like acute.
Right. But physique-wise, since I started powerlifting, I've noticed a huge difference in my physique. I put on more muscle in my legs than I was ever able to do through just straight bodybuilding type typical work. And then also it's just the mental aspect of it. I absolutely love my powerlifting programming because it's definitely something to go into the gym and get excited about, as opposed to just going in and doing a certain number of sets and reps and you kind of just go through the motions. Whereas with powerlifting, you have a specific goal typically in mind for each workout. At least for me, for my program that I'm following now, each day I have a certain number of sets, certain number of reps, and you know, it's a challenge. So I really enjoy that challenge and just having a specific goal in mind. So definitely, both from a mental and a physical aspect of improving my physique, and also just the training outlook and how your mental perspective when you're training is really, I enjoy both aspects of it.
Sumo deadlift, squat, and hip thrust, so I guess they're all barbell.
I would say squat is some type of variation, deadlift for sure, I'm biased to sumo because that's what I pull, and I just know how much it's helped me develop hamstrings. So I program that into all my clients' programs, or at least some variation of deadlift. And then I would say some sort of an upper body movement, so either bench or overhead press to develop your shoulders.
Yeah, number 4, overhead press.
Yeah, yeah.
So powerlifting has helped me with being confident in the gym, and definitely feeling strong is different than just looking good. And I think both of them can go hand in hand, because a lot of people kind of separate them, or they think they need to be separated. They think, oh, you're either a powerlifter and you're strong, or you're a physique competitor and you look good. But I think that if you do a combination of the powerlifting and bodybuilding, you can kind of, you feel your best, or you feel better, and then you walk around, feeling really good about yourself, and you're also stronger.
Yeah,
so
everyone wants to look good.
You can do more and not feel, you don't just feel like, you just feel like you can do stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it besides that.
Yeah. So a lot of people do kind of think of that, the strict, it's either powerlifting
One or the other,
or it's either bodybuilding, but you can really do a combination. 'Cause I know for myself, since I started out in the bodybuilding type, I guess, training, it got exhausting, because it's like the changes in your physique really are so small that just focusing on that gets exhausting. I know for me, I was just like, well, looking in the mirror, I kind of look the same, and you see yourself every day. So it's really hard to be objective with yourself and how your physique is looking. And, building muscle is so slow. So I found it exhausting just to be focusing on aesthetics as opposed to strength.
Yeah.
So I think with powerlifting, if you see a 5-pound jump in your squat, or if you see a certain, you're able to hit a PR on a plus set at the end of a deadlift or something, that is so exciting, and you're getting stronger, and it's very measurable, as opposed to sometimes if you just focus on your physique, then it's like, at least I found myself getting kind of lost in that.
You get frustrated.
Yeah.
Especially if you're doing a contest prep and you're just focused on that,
right.
it's, you're gonna see progress, but if you're not consistently in that, it's hard to see, especially as a female, you don't want to see the opposite happening, but it does, you know what I mean? So it can definitely be hard in the off season. So I always tell myself, or try to remind myself and my clients, focus on performance in the off season, and then that way you can, always have goals you're hitting.
Right, and especially in the off season, when you're, you want to be putting on muscle, and you see your performance in the gym going up, that means you're getting stronger. That means you're putting on muscle. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's very mentally freeing, I would say. I found my mental perspective completely changed, because I came from a place of restrictive diets and excessive cardio, and so I think once I started, I started implementing flexible dieting and counting my macros, and then also once I started powerlifting, I was really focused on, okay, I need to fuel my workout. So it's less about I just also found that mentally freeing as well. So I was thinking about fuel and recovery, and just, I want to fuel my body the best so I can go lift some heavy weights, and ultimately that's what's going to shape your physique as well. Because if you're lifting heavier, then your volume's going to be accumulating. If you fuel your body, you're going to be able to work out harder and better and build more muscle.
And even if you don't train for a powerlifting competition, you can still use the eating for performance as a way to get stronger, and as a way, because ultimately that's going to shape you to look better. So for any girl who's watching this, even if you don't have dreams of going on the platform, you should still eat for a performance, and not just how you look, how you feel that day, because we can play those mind tricks. So that kind of alleviates that pressure almost. If you're eating for, okay, I have to have a good session today, so I'm not gonna skip this meal because I feel bloated. I'm gonna eat because I need to go squat later.
Yeah, based on daily fluctuations. It's more about your overall performance and focusing on getting in good workouts and building your physique.
I think everyone's kind of gone through those fluctuations and that yo-yo type pattern, and I always try to tell everyone, that's the absolute worst thing you can do. Typically what happens is, even if you have overeaten, just go back to whatever you're doing previously, or you should be doing, and just being consistent, because we talked about this on the Powercast, but being consistent is definitely number one. And even if you do have a day where, everyone has days where they go off, what I mean? Nobody's perfect, obviously, you know what I mean? But just kind of going back instead of having those yo-yo fluctuations, because that will cause the guilt, and then that can cause the overeating again. And also,
it's
a nightmare.
Having something sustainable, I think, is really important. because I know from even experience having something that is very extreme and then both ways, so under eating and then overeating. If you're attempting to follow some restrictive diet, then you're going to get those horrible cravings, and then it's more likely that you're going to go over and
then go under, and then
right. So then you're trying to make up for it. Whereas if you have something that you can actually stick to and you can see yourself doing long term, that's what's most important, because as she said, it's consistency and adherence. Yeah. And so you want a diet that you can adhere to and be consistent with.
I had an eating disorder starting at 8 years old. I kind of dealt with that all through growing up. I've obviously better now, but the patterns are still there. You don't just get rid of all those feelings, and you don't get rid of the tendencies that you have as kind of a perfectionist and all those types of things. So it's something that I still struggle with and deal with. A lot of people think that just because you've had something and you've been successful that you just don't have it anymore, but it's still there. And I would say that finding something that is sustainable, and because most people who have eating disorders are extremists, and we tend to like that, but having something that is sustainable will kind of dull those feelings more. And also having attainable goals such as powerlifting or just any kind of performance related goals to shift your focus off of just purely the physical, because that's when you can really get to those warped feelings, especially in the mirror, the distorted images, and that just kind of keeps the eating disorder going. So really have other goals just besides physique goals, and try to find something that's sustainable.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing. My kind of eating issues started when I was running track, and I was trying to be as thin as possible. So mine kind of started out just restrictive for performance. So it wasn't really body image was associated with it, because of course as a female in high school, you get bombarded by media and need to be skinny and thin and blah blah blah. So I was attempting that, but then also for performance for track. But what I found myself, when I got injured, then I was struggling with emotional eating. So then I was restricting and then binging. So I did struggle with that throughout high school and then in college. Kind of these horrible ups and downs, as we had talked about, are kind of results. So a lot of the ups, a lot of the ups and downs are resulting from restricting yourself because you are so deprived and you're so low on calories. Yeah. So that is definitely something that I have dealt with a lot in the past. And it wasn't until I started incorporating flexible dieting and macros and counting my macros and realizing I can fit in foods that I enjoy in moderation and hit my numbers, and I feel satisfied. Satisfies my cravings, that I had for sugar or bread or whatever, because that's all stuff that I used to restrict. Then I found myself being much more consistent, and that's really when I started seeing the biggest changes in my physique as well. And then my relationship with food changed, because there's not good and bad foods. So that's something that I think a lot of people associate a kind of, what would you say, like moral compass to food? Like it's like either a good food or a bad food.
Oh, this is good. Yeah. This is bad. Oh, I had my naughty cheat meal.
Right, cheat meal, etc. And I think that creates this good and bad association with food, whereas food is fuel. Your body digests a carb. It's like a carb is a carb.
Is butter a carb? Yes.
Of course, it's important to have get nutrients, fiber, a wide array. I mean, most of the food that I eat is actually, technically like healthy, clean food.
Yeah, that's what we eat. Like people who do flexible dieting correctly usually tend to eat healthy foods.
Yeah, exactly. I would say flexible dieting is kind of, it can vary. Yeah. So flexible dieting, there's different types of, different.
You can be really hardcore with tracking your macros, or you can just eat foods in moderation that you enjoy. There's basically, how I look at it from a research perspective from my project, was specific or non-specific foods. So basically you're filling your goals with non-specific foods.
Yeah. So basically how you can choose how to fit your I call it like a budget, a macro budget. So proteins, fats, and carbs. So I know for myself, I eat mostly healthy foods to fit my protein, but then and carbs and fats. But then if I want a treat, then I fit it in and accordingly. So I think for people that want to start incorporating flexible dieting, I would just kind of start tracking like what you're eating and see where you're at, and be consistent with your diet, and kind of get a baseline macro where someone is starting out, because that's really important, because a lot of people too have over dieted, because I know for myself I used to maintain weight on a lot less calories than I can now. So then your body adapts to those low calories. So it's really important to kind of get a baseline and determine where you want to go from there. But then realize that you can still fit in, your favorite foods, and you can still eat things in moderation. I think it's all about just having something moderate and sustainable.
And I think people get really, really overwhelmed with the tracking idea and the weighing, and they see the obsessiveness. Yeah. And I think once you've done it for a while, that you can definitely eyeball things easier, and that it's not you're not like a slave to your numbers always. If you're kind of if you've been doing it for a while, you can kind of understand relatively where you should be, if you're under, if you're over. And so I think that's like a big turnoff for people, is they think, oh, forever I need to be on MyFitnessPal and my food scale. No, I don't do that all the time. You know what I mean? If I'm prepping for a show, of course. But if I'm not, it's a lot easier for me, because you just understand food better, I think, if you've tracked for a little while. You just understand.
Makes you accountable.
Yeah.
So as opposed to having a meal plan where you're just like, oh, I wonder why I'm eating this. Flexible dieting really makes you accountable, so you know what you're putting in your body.
Just starting and not being intimidated of the weights. And I think the biggest problem that a lot of people run into is comparison, especially with social media. And they see someone doing X amount of weight, or they're going to look at Katie and say, look what she deadlifted today. They go, I can't do that. No, that's not what you have to start at. She didn't start at that either.
So, what I'm deadlifting now.
I think the biggest issue is, that kind of confidence thing, like, oh, I can't do that, and comparing yourself to other people, and don't do that. Nobody's really looking at you in the gym. They're probably focused on themselves. So don't be afraid to just go in there and try something. And I think that's a big thing, is the comparison issue. So just start small. You can always build up. You're always going to get stronger.
It's a process. I mean, we didn't start where we are now.
No.
We all started somewhere. So I think a lot of times too, women get intimidated being in the gym, because they're one of the only ones there. But
I think it's gotten better. The past few years. We're definitely seeing more girls, but I still hear that.
For sure. I know I'm the only girl. I feel uncomfortable, but I mean, it's like you're empowered. At least for myself. I mean, I know I'm typically one of the few females, depending which gym I go to. But it really, once you get comfortable in the weight room, it takes some time, because it's not like immediate. I know I used to feel uncomfortable being, lifting weights and being over where all the guys are or whatever. But, once you find that empowerment that comes with weightlifting that I know I've found for myself, then really it builds your confidence not only in the gym, but also in other aspects of your life. So,
So we're both 5'7", right?
Yeah, we're both 5'7".
My weight kind of changes a lot with competing, but I'm anywhere from 145 to 125, so kind of a big range. But I would say that that's kind of the top of where I'm at, is 5'7", 145. And, for years I've tried to get too big. And it's really just a matter of, are you lean enough or are you not lean? And that's kind of where the bulkiness comes from. And yes, there are people who build muscle a lot faster than others. Like clearly I'm not one of them, you know what I mean? I've been trying, to have like these huge shoulders, but look. But there are some people who are genetically gifted, and they are, more jacked. But I don't think it has anything to do with the specific lifting, do you know what I mean? And I really think it comes down more to a body fat issue, the bulkiness. And the more you weight train, actually, the better you're going to be at maintaining your weight, or even, losing weight, having a better body composition.
The more muscle you have, the more calories you can eat,
You're just kind of hanging out easier instead of like relying on cardio, relying on the elliptical. And
I do no cardio. I don't have to anymore, and I used to be, sorry, Laurin. No, I used to be at a place where I was doing cardio sessions twice a day. So I've been on the other extreme. For me, we already said we're both 5'7", and I typically fluctuate anywhere from 140 to 148 pounds. It really depends. I know for myself, it's interesting because people, they see pictures like on Instagram or whatever, and they're like, oh my God, you're so veiny, whatever, or you're so jacked. And then like, it was in Vegas when we were just at the Olympia, and someone came up to me and said, oh my God, you're so tiny. And I was like, I know. Whatever. There's also too, when you see like a picture on Instagram or whatever,
and you're posing in good lighting, and you just had a pump,
right. It's very different, and people have said that I look bulky or whatever, and but they've never met me before. So then when people meet me, they're like, oh, actually. And it's interesting because I never got comments about being bulky, even when I weighed like 25 pounds more than I did now, because my body fat was higher, so I didn't look like shredded, real muscular.
Like we were size small, like we're
right. Oh yeah, like this is size small. Yeah, So I think too, you have to keep the perspective of if you're a natural athlete as well, which we both are, you're not gonna put on a bunch of muscle. Like I will be lucky to put on, oh my gosh, it's so hard. So my weight this year is like barely higher than it was last year in terms of stage weight. Yeah. So it's very hard to put on muscle. And also, sometimes people say, oh, we wanna look like you. I wanna start lifting weights, but I don't wanna get bulky. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. Take a step back. Like we lift weights like all the time.
Like all I do is lift weights. Like
so you will not get bulky. Like and we've been lifting for several years because we got into it pretty early. So
for them to think that they're just gonna like blow up, it's like no.
Right. It's definitely not. It's not a muscle issue. It's a body fat issue. If you're the only way
about that.
Right. The only way you're going to get bulky by lifting is if you're lifting and eating excess calories, like a lot. Even, it's body fat. It's not. Yeah. It's not the muscle bulk. So,
LaurinConlin.com is my website where you can contact me for nutrition consultation, posing, training programs. My Facebook is Laurin Conlin IFBB Pro. My YouTube is Laurin Conlin, and my Instagram is @LaurinConlin. Laurin with an I, so make sure to spell that right.
Laurin. My YouTube is Katie Ann. My Facebook is Katie Ann. I am at KatieAnn100 on Instagram and Periscope. And then my email is katieannfit@gmail.com. I'm currently working on a website. Do not have a website yet. And so that's how you can contact me for anything nutritional, consulting, or training.